Big money.
The Kansas City Chiefs lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars in preseason game 1. What's up, everybody? Ken Swanson here with Matthew Lane, here to break down everything that happened in Jacksonville. Matthew Lane, that was 60 minutes of football.
I don't know if that was 60 minutes nor football. If I were going to critique what you just said, whatever, I don't know, man. That was something that game got real interesting real fast. But it was nice to have football back. It really was. The excitement was there when it started. Seeing Patrick Mahomes go out there on that first drive, things were looking just fine. It was fun. All the feelings were there. And then the game just took the most preseason of preseason turns that I've ever seen.
Yeah, that really was the most preseason football game I've ever seen in my life. But man, it did feel good. It felt good to be back. It really did. I was excited to finally get to watch some Chiefs football. Lots to discuss here today. I think before we get too far down the rabbit hole here, we are definitely going to be waiting to hear news of what's going on with Hollywood Brown. That is obviously the biggest thing that came out of this game. Hollywood Brown is suffered some kind of shoulder injury. We'll wait to see what happens and what the diagnosis is on that. They called him questionable to return, but obviously because he probably wasn't going to play much beyond that possession anyway, there's some murkiness to the true status of what's going on with Hollywood Brown. So I'm sure Tucker will jump in if he does have any news on Hollywood Brown, as Andy Reid will be taking the podium, I'm sure, here shortly. But yeah, obviously you don't want to see your presumed wide receiver one go down with an injury, Matthew.
Yeah, no, that's not great, especially when he is a player that has a history of injuries. Now, it seems like the early reports were a shoulder injury, which is clearly from the contact. And like Hollywood Brown has had a handful of lower body, foot, ankle injuries. So it doesn't seem related to his prior injuries in any way, shape, or form. But he's also a very slight wide receiver that in his very first catch in a Chiefs uniform gets a very routine tackle, and they kind of immediately take him to the locker room. We don't know if he could have come back and play. Like, we have to wait for the updates and everything to come out from the team. It could all be precautionary because it was preseason game 1, and the Chiefs and Andy Reid clearly had it set in their mind that they were getting to their third and fourth stringers as quickly as humanly possible. So it could be absolutely nothing, but it's definitely a little bit of a, that's not a great start. And I mean, you mentioned it. You're even capping off that first drive where Hollywood Brown gets hurt on the first play. Your next best wide receiver kind of drops a pass, a difficult catch, but drops a pass to end the drive on third down. It was not a great start for the Kansas City Chiefs, Ken.
I mean, they got a field goal out of the deal, man. Come on. Like, hey, points are points. It's money there. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really looking too much into that, right? Like, I don't think there's a ton to take away from the offensive side of the ball. I think the only thing I just wish we would have seen them just take an immediate shot down the field to Xavier Worthy, but I
think they were trying. I think that first play to Hollywood Brown, I'm pretty sure Worthy was running a little double move behind it, and there's one, there was a safety there, and then 2, the pressure was coming in.
They wanted it.
Yeah, they tried. It was there. I saw that, and I thought of what you're calling out the shot. And I was like, oh, it's there, but it didn't work. I actually think on the third down play, Pat was working the left side, but I'm pretty sure that Worthy, at least over the corner that was on his side, I'm pretty sure he got a step on him. He just wasn't looking that way, and I don't know with the broadcast what sees there, but like there might have been another chance in there. The speed looked real. We got two visuals of him running deep. The speed looked real. They didn't really get a chance to try it out though.
And we're gonna get the all 22 of that here, like in 24 hours, 24 to 48 hours or so.
Not.
Yes. Yes, you will. They give it to the preseason now. Yes, they do. They do it now.
I don't trust
Promise. I watched this is sicko behavior. I watched some preseason all 22 like in the last month from last year.
Is that why you're banished to a closet right now?
I am in Wichita, Kansas right now. But yeah, it's
a padded room for people that watch preseason all 22.
I told these guys the other night, I watched Carolina Panthers football from last year the other night to help me fall asleep, and it worked. I think, with the injuries that this team has sustained, or some of the concerns that the Chiefs have on the offensive line with injuries with Joe Thuney, with Wanye Morris, I think this team was really looking to try to get their their offensive line out of the off the field very quickly, because they played 4 plays. They played that opening possession, and then they went ahead and just put the entire second team offensive line right on the field immediately after that. So, I mean, I think they were really, you made a point, but I think that's just because they don't want to risk anything with that offensive line and with the health of that group. They want to try and keep them as healthy as they could. So I think that was kind of the plan there all along.
I mean, maybe that would make sense. They play the 4 plays. They pull out all 4 starters, and then Mike Caliendo, I think, switches positions to play a little bit of center after that. So, I mean, theoretically, I think that makes sense why they got him out. I'm a little surprised that Kingsley Suamataia didn't get more reps just because he needs reps, but maybe they are kind of just we don't want to, we're already fit at this position. We don't have our backup left tackles available. We really only have 3 other offensive tackles we're going to play in this game whatsoever. We don't want to risk another guy getting hurt. Then we're playing guys out of position. So it did seem like there was probably some definite load management stuff going on in preseason game 1, especially for guys that are expected to be starters and to make this team. And so, I don't know if we can look much into anything else that happened. The Chiefs' backup offensive line went up against the Jags starters for a drive and a half. Didn't look great doing that, and it kind of didn't seem like they didn't really get their footing until in the second half, where you were deep into the depth of both teams, and that's kind of where you saw the game get a little bit more even, just in terms of which levels of players were out there on both sides.
We saw the biggest return in the history of the new kickoff rules today, as well as the Chiefs surrender that. That was something.
That was after the Hollywood Brown injury, the Rice drop, then the big return.
Yeah, it was a funny start. Honestly, there's my opinion of this football team has not changed even a little bit. And if it has, I don't know, man, this is preseason football. Please do not go take it too seriously in that regard. But I do think it's just kind of funny. They're working the kinks out a little bit on some of these things, and just a lot of little things went wrong for the Chiefs today when they're working some stuff out with the return game. They give up a big play there. Some of the other special team snafus were kind of funny with, the scenario with Deneric Prince, and honestly, it's Deneric Prince more than is McCole Hardman, I think, kind of covering, McCole was actually kind of trying to cover for Deneric Prince. The ball lands in the end zone. Deneric turns around. McCole has the kind of the presence of mind to go, oh, hold on. We need to pick that football up. The ball bounced into back into field of play. Some weird stuff getting worked out there today.
Montrell Washington and Deneric Prince tried to field the same kick at the same time. For Dave Toub, who is very clearly a smart, very good and smart, innovative special teams guy, and they were trying stuff. I do want to say they were trying a few things. But for a team coached by Dave Toub, who is considered very innovative and forefront and a good special teams coach, boy, did they not seem very well prepared for this new kickoff rule, whatsoever. And you, like you said, you don't want to take anything in the preseason too seriously, but I've watched a fair bit of preseason football. Now I've seen a lot of different kickoffs. The Chiefs were by far the least disciplined team I saw in kick coverage, just in terms of making a giant wall of wadded up mess for the opposing team to try to run through. They kind of routinely had guys getting out of place, which is a little odd for a team that is supposed to have a really good special teams coach. Now, part of that could be coming from the fact that they were trying that bounce kick thing. So if it does roll into the end zone, you get it at the 20, which theoretically is a smart idea if you can pull it off. But if that's making your coverage lanes for the for the coverage players more difficult, is it worth it? So I don't know. I'm fascinated to watch how it keeps going. I do think it was really fitting in how funny this preseason game was that a Dave Tobe special teams unit was one of the worst at the new kickoff rule that we've seen so far.
And you could also chalk it up to that probably is even I paid a lot of attention to the starting kickoff team. I wanted to kind of see who was getting that first crack at it, on the kickoff team. And I think there's probably some guys on that roster, on that group, that probably aren't going to wind up on the 53-man roster. That's because the Chiefs have a lot of players that they're holding back, specifically in the secondary. They're holding a lot of their defensive backs back. So like that can kind of get in the way of the depth of this thing. So like I think that plays a little bit into maybe why you saw some struggles there too, is because that's probably not your first team return team as well. Not completely excusing everything away, but like if you're looking at layers to some things, there's one of them. I want to talk about some fun stuff here though. Like I know we just kind of just talked about 11 minutes, just how weird of a football game that was and some of the stuff that was going on in it, but there were a couple big bright spots that for me, one on both sides of the football, that I am very excited to talk about. I want to talk. Let's start with Carson Steele. Can we start with Carson? We have to start with Carson Steele. The angriest run of 2024 already exists with Carson Steele doing a fantastic job, breaking 3 tackles, and not even just breaking 3 tackles, but just punishing someone for having the audacity to try to tackle Carson Steele. He scores the only touchdown for the Kansas City Chiefs today, and kind of showed, I think, why, there's reason for excitement around the 21-year-old undrafted free agent running back out of Ball State / UCLA, Matthew.
Carson Steele looked really good at a time in this game where it was just kind of funny how bad the Chiefs were playing overall. Carson Steele gets into the game and immediately takes essentially just like this delayed inside zone handoff, and from a dead stop has to accelerate, shrugs off this first tackler in the would-be tackler in the box, goes out and runs over another defender out in open space. He kind of sets the tone for hey, at least for this drive, you're going to have something worth looking at from a fan's perspective. We're going to come out here and show you something you have not seen so far in this game. Downhill, punishing run style, everything that you would want to see from a running back / fullback that's coming in to 230, 200, maybe near 240 pounds now. That was really fun to see. You get him into the red zone. He gets that 4th down carry where they just run this kind of gun single back power. He just tucks right in behind the puller, gets a nice, easy touchdown. I think it couldn't have really gone a lot better for Carson Steele here. Here's a guy that was probably on the verge of fighting for a roster spot, and they're trying to play him at fullback. Now, we didn't get to see him block necessarily, but we can see right here as we're watching these highlights, he's just running over guys. He's running downhill. He's running angry. Justin Ross in the way. That's all right. We'll run him over too. It's a teammate, block better, and move. I think this is the most fun part of the game, was watching Carson Steele run and trying to think of ways that Andy Reid and Matt Nagy and company can use this guy once the season starts.
Well, he ran Hunter Norzad over to get into the end zone too, got behind his pulling guard and just said, "You know what, Hunter? I'm gonna sneak in here a little bit here too." It was a fantastic performance from him, and it's something you wanted to see. I think one of the question marks, just when you're looking at him, is okay, so he's a little bit undersized for a fullback, and maybe he's not fast enough top end speed for a true running back. But you saw the abilities that he has as a running back translate, which I think was really important for him and his outlook on the team, because he maybe not be a true fullback, but he showed he has some running chops. He has some chops as a runner, and that was evident at UCLA too. But it translated well. Sometimes it translates and sometimes it doesn't, and especially when it's a guy that's a little bit on the slower side. So I think there's promise for him as a blocker, both as a lead blocker in some scenarios, but also as a pass protector. And then you put that with some true capabilities. I think as a runner here, you got to see him do a little bit of stuff there. There's reason for excitement there. It's going to be hard to. I think it's going to be hard to keep him off the roster at this point. Back in June, go.
I was just the only thing I really wanted to see, and I hope we get it in the next preseason game. And like you said, because of the injuries to the offensive line, because of how thin they were there and stuff like that, maybe that's why you didn't see it. I just want to see some blocking reps as a run blocker, right? If you are going to legitimately use him as a fullback, you probably want to see how he can block. And it's not that the Chiefs are going to go with 2 backs all the time, but can you at least use him as a threat to lead through the hole or not? I mean, we obviously see he has the power to handle contact in the hole, to run over guys. So can they use him as a blocker, or is he quite literally just going to be a big running back that is slotted as a fullback on the depth chart? It's not about necessarily making him is he going to make the roster or not? It's just how are they going to use him once it starts? I would really like to see him get some actual fullback, lead blocking reps just to understand, what their plans for him might be.
Yeah, and I don't think the Chiefs are going to fully reveal it. They are probably going to be the one. They are going to be the ones that have the best understanding of what he's capable of doing from that perspective, and maybe they want to keep a little bit off tape. I could see a scenario where they do, maybe throw a couple looks out there, like like that offset fullback dive that they love to run behind Trey Smith. With they might wind up going to that in the preseason, because who knows if they're actually going to wind up using, like, they recycle a lot of those plays, even some of those situational plays. You'll see them recycle a lot of those whenever they're in the preseason game. You're like, hey, that looks familiar from 2022. They used they ran the Chad Henne sprint out today in a short yardage situation. So the one where he kind of throws that little throw to the flat. So like the fullback dive behind Trey Smith with Carson Steele. Let's try to get it in a short yardage situation here next week or the week after. Defensive side of the ball, there was another guy that I thought really stood out, and it's another rookie. It was another guy that found out his fate on day 3 of the NFL draft. Carson Steele got the call from the Chiefs on Saturday, but Jaden Hicks got the call in the draft as a 4th-round selection. And I thought he had a fantastic day, both on defense and on special teams, Matthew.
Before we dive in to Jaden Hicks, I agree with you. We got to go to Tucker. D stands for breaking news, I think, Franklin.
Yeah, Sam McDowell from KC Star tweeted, Hollywood Brown has the same injury that Tyreek Hill suffered in Jacksonville back in 2019. Andy Reid said that at the podium. He's at the hospital being checked out currently. So that is the latest on Hollywood Brown.
Not great.
What was the official injury from Tyreek Hill? Was it just like an AC joint?
AC joint, I believe, is what it was.
Like a sprain, and you got to figure out the severity. Tyreek Hill missed a good chunk of time, right? That 4 weeks.
So he missed, I think, somewhere between 4, something like that. That sounds about right. That was a well, was it that many? It was a regular, but that was the regular season start. And so at least this is, we've got 4 weeks until the first game of the season, but there's a chance that gets into the way of their ability to have the Hollywood Brown revenge game against the Baltimore Ravens.
I have another. This is a tweet from Jordan Foote. Chiefs head coach Andy Reid said Hollywood Brown suffered a sternoclavicular joint dislocation, which he compared to Tyreek Hill's injury from 2019. Also against the Jaguars, said he'll potentially miss some time. Hill missed 4 games, according to Jordan Foote, in 2019.
Okay. So that's 4 weeks, right? Like you're looking at a 4-week, that's pushing it against, for the start of the regular season. So maybe he is missing a little bit of time into the regular season.
No, I mean, it wouldn't be much. It wouldn't be much there of a difference. Like if you look at from now to the start of the season, so maybe he misses the first couple weeks. Maybe it lasts longer because we obviously will not know. We won't know the difference or anything between that. So not great for a guy with his first year with the team. And I think they probably had a lot of expectations for Hollywood Brown. I think if you watch like training camp or even this game, just like that very first play, I think you were going to see a lot of Hollywood Brown working the short to intermediate areas underneath Xavier Worthy, while teams also paid attention to Rice. I think Hollywood Brown was set for a big year. So hopefully once he comes back, he can hit the ground running again. It could be worse, right? It's not the worst injury you can have, but also not a great start for his like first action for the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not great. Definitely not great. We'll see if we get any more updates during the show. I don't know if we will. And Tucker, feel free to jump in if you get any more interesting nuggets there from the press conference.
Presser is starting now, so I'll keep my eye out there and I'll just hop in whenever.
That sounds great. Thank you. You're doing a tremendous job, as did Jaden Hicks, Matthew.
Jaden Hicks. Yeah. Listen, we're going to talk about some other guys throughout this. I can maybe find the occasional, like some highlights of some other offensive players. Defensively, I don't know if there's a lot of positive to talk about besides Jaden Hicks. I think he was kind of the only guy on the defensive side of the ball that seemed like he really kind of stepped up and came to play in this game. And obviously there was still some rookie moments, but the first thing you kind of notice about him is one, he's big, very big safety, very physical. He flies downhill and he's making plays, and you saw him make some plays in the flat. You saw him come up and he got the penalty on the blitz, but like it was well timed. He did a good job. He did a good job busting through the line. He's got to lower that helmet level a little bit. So yeah, I was kind of pleasantly surprised by Jaden Hicks. He was playing a lot of deep safety because they were kicking Shamari Connor down into the slot when all the starters were playing. It was nice to see him get those reps, look like he belonged with everybody else out there. And then as the game went on, you saw him make some plays on special teams, on defense. You saw him make plays from the box, from deep. So yeah, really strong showing from Jaden Hicks. You're like, hey, if you're looking at this Chiefs draft, looking for the guy that might be able to tip the scales to say, oh, wow, they got a ton of value here. Not just these guys are good, but a ton of value. Hicks is the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think timing wise of this team just sticking to the board and taking a player of that kind of talent, credit to them, because there's a chance that they could need Jaden Hicks very quickly if, Justin Reed's not able to start the season out the way that they hope, that he's able to, because, he's still working to come back from that injury that he's dealing with as well. Jaden Hicks is a fantastic replacement for a Justin Reed. Like I say, completely like for like, but there's a lot of things that Jaden Hicks showed today that the Chiefs have asked, Justin Reed to be capable of doing. And, our first test for Jaden Hicks was fantastic. I thought he had a great game. I thought he tackled with great consistency and then made plays in special teams too. That's a big time. That was a big time performance from a young safety. And I think if like that's like the shining star, I think of on the defensive side of the ball. So like I thought that was really positive. So good on Jaden Hicks. We're gonna take a break. We'll be back right after this. Maybe.
Psych. It's okay. We can buy time here in the meantime.
Yeah, I wasn't really prepared for you to throw to a break yet, actually. So
yeah,
perfect.
Yeah, that one's on me. Here. Now we're gonna go to a break.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
Chiefs lose the Carson Steele breakout game 26-13 in the preseason, but we are still humming along here. Talked a little bit about Carson Steele already, and obviously Jaden Hicks just got done talking about him. I want to get into some of the positives still, Matthew. So you said you might have some other players on the positive side that you wanted to talk a little bit about before we get into some of the things that gave us some concern.
I think I was just being nice and saying that, like, if I had to throw a dart at somebody in the offense that did well, I could maybe find one. I thought Mike Caliendo on his first pull of the game on Isaiah Pacheco's run, good job coming through there on the power. It's a nice little quick pull. He got up in there, made a good block. That was good. I feel okay. I know it's not everybody does, but I feel pretty good about Mike Caliendo replacing Nick Allegretti as a spot starter if you need to, if somebody gets hurt on the interior. And then I think you saw a couple. I think it's interesting. I mentioned it earlier. Xavier Worthy goes out for the first drive. I think maybe he came out in the second series a little bit, and then they pulled him. They said, "Nah, you're done." They kind of did the same thing with Kingsley Sumate at left tackle. They were pulling rookies that they expect to have a big role early on, but I do think it was notable how Xavier Worthy moved on the field in live game reps versus another team has no intent on making it easy for him. You could tell he just kind of moves a little different than other guys. So that's really all the positives I got. And I don't mean that to say everything else was terrible. It's just the Chiefs really didn't do a whole lot that's ever going to pop up in this preseason, especially this one, but any preseason game.
Yeah, the other one I would give you is Justin Ross. I thought he did a really good job out there making some nice catches and good body adjustments.
Block, but
that it's still a work in progress there. But when you look at a defined role for him and an opportunity, they've tried to find some bigger body guys to be high red, low red type players that they can get involved in packages. And they tried that last year with Justin Ross, but he seemed a lot more comfortable, and he's had some moments and he's flashed some moments in the last month that I think tell you he's a better player than he was this time last year. If I don't know what that means for the outlook for him, how much better is he? How much more trust has he earned? Can they figure out from a roster construction, an opportunity to get him on the team? But when you're looking at these receivers having, you look at this receiver group trying to, figure out who's making it, who's not. You need, sometimes it's good to make a splash play or two here. I think we're talking about that on the lab this week. And Justin Ross, I think, is the guy that made the splash play this week that might help, give him, some different consideration as they're looking to put the bottom of this roster together.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. Ross fills a different role than a lot of the other wide receivers that are competing for the back end roster spots too. So if he is impressing for this team in camp and practices, and he can come out and show in these games that he's up for the task, I think that's definitely notable. For where I'm tracking for Ross right now, is he still playing deep into the second half next preseason game? Because if that's the case, I don't know. I feel maybe a little less. And this is also considering Tony doesn't play. Hollywood Brown leaves the game early. They pull all the starters after 2 series. Justin Watson's not playing, and Justin Ross was still deep into the game, right? So it's just, you got to kind of pay attention a little bit when these things are coming. But if he's been impressive and he does fill this different body type, there's definitely a rationale for him making one of the 6 or 7 wide receivers that are on this team. I do wonder if that changes a little bit with Hollywood Brown maybe missing time, though. Now, do you need that other body type, or do you need the McCole Hardman and Kadarius Toney, what we are calling redundancy before? Do you now actually need that redundancy because you are missing one of the guys that is that type of player? So it'll be interesting to see how it goes moving forward.
Do you think Deneric Prince helped himself at all this today, Matthew?
He definitely didn't hurt himself. I think his stock is up because the very little we saw of Clyde was not impressive. And at least what you saw from Deneric Prince was like, hey, this guy is NFL fast. The game didn't look too fast for him like it did last preseason, but I don't know if he necessarily got a chance to really show out because, as we kind of mentioned, the Chiefs' second team offensive line was really bad. Really, really bad. Now, part of that's because you're missing Wanye Morris, who was going to be, playing left tackle. And that meant that Shu Godric, who might have been playing right tackle, was playing on the left side out of his spot. So you already had guys missing that were moving spots. But I think Deneric Prince looked good athletically, and he didn't look like the game was moving too fast like last year. But I don't know if he popped off the screen in the same way that a Carson Steele did.
Yeah, I don't think there's too much to take away from Kingsley Suamata'ia's performance today. I want to go back and watch him just to see what it looked like. Didn't seem to be a problem. Wasn't really a contributing factor in a negative way. Didn't see anything overwhelmingly off the charts yet either. I know it's kind of disappointing for fans that want to see a look at Kingsley and want to get a look at Xavier Worthy here. There's still some time here this preseason. There's still a month until the first game. You might get a bigger look at some of these guys and a bigger sample size of some of these players, before the preseason's over. But yeah, I'm excited to get an eyes on him, get a bigger sample size of him. And obviously, it would have been fun. It would have been fun to just see a little bit more of Kingsley today. But yeah, I don't think he hurt himself at all.
No, I mean, it happened so quick because the very first series, it was hard to just sit there and come in and focus on one person. I was watching to see what Patrick Mahomes was going to do in the first look of the year, and I was watching to see what Xavier Worthy did. I didn't realize that Sumatia was going to play one series and then be done. That thought never crossed my mind that an air raid rookie left tackle would only get one series. But I think to your point, they knew they had injuries. They just wanted to get out of there with their guys at the top, healthy. It made sense. It looked like the Chiefs kind of came in with the plan of okay, we're going through the motions for this game. We'll maybe lock in going forward. So I don't think it's anything negative. I just wasn't prepared to focus and hone in on Kingsley that very first series. And that's all we saw of him.
I think it's time to talk a little bit about Felix Anudike-Uzomah. He's a player that was definitely someone I think pretty much all Chiefs fans were wanting to watch and get good eyes on and get a chance to watch. I will say before we talk too much about this, the argument about him, how long he played, I don't think matters because the Chiefs don't have a ton of defensive ends. Truman Jones and Owen Carney, the only other two on the depth chart that are lower than him. So they took over the fourth quarter. Felix Anudike-Uzomah did play 3 quarters of this football game. I think it was good that he got a lot of reps. I think he needs a lot of reps. And I think we kind of saw some of the ups and downs, the where he fits, the outlook for Felix Anudike-Uzomah kind of, showing and revealing itself a little bit more, Matthew.
Yeah. For me, this is how I look at it. Was this guy playing in the third quarter of a preseason game, a meaningless preseason game that was clearly being chalked up as let's just get out of here as healthy as we can? Yes. And in that third quarter of the preseason game in which he's playing with third stringers and fourth stringers against other third stringers and fourth stringers, did he stand out as clearly better than anybody else? And the answer was no. And that in itself is a problem, right? you can go back to George Karlaftis, and I know George Karlaftis is like a lofty name, but like you can go back to him as a rookie. He's not playing that deep into the preseason and looking like just another guy out there with the guys fighting for a roster spot. You can even go kind of look at like Mike Dana and like his early career preseasons. He's not playing that deep, or when he was, you kind of felt his impact a little bit. It was one of those things where like he stood out as like, oh, this guy looks kind of good. Let's write his name down and see what happens. I never really got that vibe with Felix during this game. There was multiple times where tight ends were having their way with him, and on run plays, they were just driving him out of the hole. The Jags are running right behind it. I know he still has the same explosive. He's an explosive, fast player. He's a super athlete. And so they ran that stunt where he looped up the middle and he closed on the quarterback fast. He got up the arc on Jaden Hicks' personal foul penalty. He got up the arc really quick, and the left tackle hesitated because of the pressure, and Felix ran right around him like he was standing still. But so many plays in between those free path of the quarterbacks, whether it was a run play or having to actually beat a tackle's hands, there was just nothing there that stood out. And like I said, we're talking about deep into the third quarter of a game. I do not take this game as a strong sign of a ton of development. I'm not saying none, but a ton of development in terms of FAU ready to come in and push the Chiefs' top 3 defensive ends when Charles Omenihu was healthy for significant snaps.
Yeah, I thought it was very up and down for him. Like, yes, you got to see some of the athletic ability. I did see one nice little play up the arc, turning a corner on Walker Little. But I think there's a lot in between there that kind of helped define him a little bit for, I'm not ready to completely define him. But, like, I think the thing that you have to struggle with is, Steve Spagnuolo talked about, playing with more physicality. You wanted to see him play with more play strength this year. And those two things really did not exist in the tape today. It did not exist in the reps where Josiah DeQuara, who is a tight end, he's kind of an H-back type tight end, undersized tight end, trying to make a roster spot with the Jaguars. He had his way. He had his way with Felix Anudike-Uzomah. A lot of tight ends were. It wasn't even just a tackle engaging with them. He was getting washed and moved completely out of plays by tight ends. And that was the piece of it that was really disappointing, because if you are a Steve Spagnuolo defensive end, the requirement for you is you're going to play the run well. And if you want to be a full-time player on that defense, a guy that's going to see snaps early in the game, early downs, you got to play the run well. You got to be physical. That really wasn't what we saw against second and third string players out of Felix Anudike-Uzomah. And I think that's one of the things that when you're looking at trying to define the player and what his role, like, okay, so if he continues to struggle with tight ends in the run game and is going to get moved out of plays entirely, that means you can't play him on first and second down. So now he's kind of relegated to a sub rusher position. That limits his ability to impact games. Limits his ability to impact, this team as someone with the label of a first round pick. And so that was the thing that was a little bit disappointing for me today. And I think it speaks. That's exactly why Steve Spagnuolo said what he said. Hey, look, we need to see some physicality at him. We need to see him develop a pass rush plan. It's still a lot of athleticism, the pass rush plan, the technique, building off of ability to get up the arc. Really haven't seen a ton of that. And, he's getting washed out of place. So that was, I think I have a hard time seeing anything changing from now into a month when it comes to strength and physicality. That's all. Like, I think that's where it gets a little bit tricky for me.
Yeah, and we'll see. It's preseason game 1. Maybe preseason game 2 looks entirely different. Maybe it was a bad game. Maybe it was just like knowing he was going to play so many snaps. He was basically like, we'll see. There's no reason, I think, to pull whatever your opinion was of FAU going into this game. It should remain the same right now. I think if you were somebody like I was that was a little hesitant about his development based a lot of on what Steve Spagnuolo had said about just being ready this year, of being a ready-to-play NFL defensive end right now, you probably still have those hesitations. If you were really hyped up for what he could look like in year 2, based on the athletic traits, you should still feel that way, because one preseason game should not change that whatsoever. I just come back at the end of it. Truman Jones is playing at the end of this game. He's number 57. Felix is number 97. I have to really make sure I get to see the whole number before I can tell you which one's which. Yes, they move a little differently, but their impact on the field was roughly the same, right? Like they just roughly had the same impact. And that's not what you want out of a first-round draft pick going into year 2 compared to a UDFA. We'll see what the next one brings. I actually have a bigger concern. Cornerback.
Yeah.
Cornerback. The one thing I wanted to see going into this game after Kingsley Suamatea was, can a single cornerback come out here and play and take that job? And now it doesn't help when Jalen Watson, Najee Johnson, and Kelvin Joseph are all not playing. But the guys we did see, Joshua.
To be fair, that might be cornerback 2, 3, and 4. It legitimately might be cornerback 2, 3, and 4.
Correct. Right. Like they could be missing these guys. However, Joshua Williams was still out there. Nick Jones was still out there. Keith Taylor was still out there. All these guys got plenty of run. And I don't think, this is without seeing all 22. So we're looking at a very limited sample size of when they were actually targeted, but none of them stood out in a good way. They all got beat a couple times. Nick Jones did get a pass breakup at the back of his head, but I think you saw the fault in how he played that football the very next time they threw the football his way. If you're not going to try to turn to locate it, it's kind of hard to consistently make plays on the ball. We saw that same issue with Joshua Williams playing the vertical ball downfield where he was just hanging on the wide receiver versus actually trying to find it. Keith Taylor seemed like he was really struggling with the speed of athletes on hard breaking routes. So it wasn't a good showing for the cornerback room that we know is in this competition, but it doesn't sound like the competition is, wow, everyone's been so good. It's more that nobody has stood out yet.
Yeah. And I think it's been very difficult to judge the pecking order for that cornerback room because it's always just an injury here or there. And I still think based on a lot of what we've seen, I think the 3 that are out might be 2, 3, and 4 right now. And then everybody else is just kind of fighting for these jobs. But I think it's hard to bust the cluster of guys here between the guys that we saw today. And you're hoping that the 3 that you saw, they're playing, they're performing better. And I'm probably not being fair to Joshua Williams. He does need to be included in that group in that 2, 3, 4 conversation as well. But Joshua Williams had his struggles today too. So that's probably the one I think if you're looking at a cornerback to be a little bit more most concerned about, I think it's Williams because I think he's the one that's closest to being, he played a lot of snaps for this team last year too. So I don't know. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty at the cornerback spot, but hopefully we get to see it.
Quick?
Yeah, sure.
Let's say the Chiefs, the worst case scenario of both these scenarios that we just talked about, Felix maybe not being ready. Albert Breer, when he wrote an article about visiting the Chiefs camp, he had said that Charles Omenihu isn't expected back until November. Let's say that's true. Omenihu's not coming back till November. FAU is at the point where he's playing deep into the third quarter of preseason games and not standing out. Are you, if you're the Chiefs, signing a defensive end, or are you signing a cornerback to shore up these cornerback spots in which you have Joshua Williams, Jalen Watson, Najee Johnson, insert anybody else that aren't able to take that position, take that job away? If you were to overreact and sign a position, is it going corner or D end?
This is going to sound like a cop-out weird answer, and I'm going to Matty it to
sure.
shreds. I'm going to sign a cornerback, and I'm going to try to trade for a defensive end.
Okay.
Because I think defensive end is the most important priority for me, and I would be digging around to try to find a defensive end out there. A veteran maybe coming available, a team that's not contending, wanting to kind of move some pieces around here or there, try to get some draft capital. I'd be relatively aggressive to try to find a defensive end right now. Because Charles Omenihu till November, it's a long time. That's a lot of football you got to play. And this defensive end room does not look deep at all. I mean, we're talking about Malik Herring eating snaps, and you're hoping to get some juice from Felix Anudike-Uzomah on third downs, and that's it. I'm not overly optimistic about this group from a depth perspective, and you can never have too many defensive ends. It's a really good problem to have Charles Omenihu and a veteran defensive end somehow alongside. That's a really good rotation to have with a Mike Dana and a George Karlaftis. So I think I'd be pretty aggressive at looking to trade for a defensive end. I think of the corners that are out there, signing one makes a little bit more sense in trying to get a little bit more depth and competition and veteran experience there. But I think I don't think there's a ton of defensive ends out there that I think are significant factors for the Chiefs at this point. I think Emmanuel Ogbah, a player that they were reportedly interested in.
Yeah.
Now I think we know why. I think that he was one of the last guys that I think could have made an impact.
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest way to go about it is I'm pretty sure that the cornerback spot has better available players, right? Like you actually have starter or at least like higher end rotational level players available at cornerback, whether it's Stephon Gilmore or Dory Jackson. JC Jackson hasn't been good, but at one point in time, he was a starting level. Like they just happen to have guys out there at cornerback that are available. Whereas at edge, I don't think at this point in time, you really have a ton of guys that are out there available that seem like they're really going to make a difference. So yeah, you're probably lean at corner. And then you do know at some point in time, November, that you are getting help from Charles Omenihu. Where does help come at cornerback if you don't go out and sign it right now? So yeah, if they were to overreact one way or the other, I think that definitely cornerback is the way to go. You rely on Steve Spagnuolo to manufacture your pressure like you did a lot of last year and a lot of the year before and a lot of the year before that. And you just deal with the good coverage. So yeah, I think that's something they should consider. It seems like the buzz is a little bit more about them looking at a cornerback or at a edge rusher. But I mean, I think there's just some available corners that could actually matter for this team. So I hope they at least consider that.
There's more corner depth on the street, and you got to try to trade for one, in my opinion, at defensive end. Trade for a defensive end is what I do.
Yeah.
And maybe, who knows if something's going to come available. I just know that this team has a lot more cap flexibility than they've had in other years. In recent years, they have a little bit more wiggle room. So if they wanted to try to make a move at the deadline, they could do it a lot more easily than they've maybe been able to prior. So, and maybe they're waiting until the deadline. But I'd rather try to shore up that defensive end position a little bit, because it could go downhill very quickly. I like Malik Herring for an early down player. And if you're talking about combining a Malik Herring and a Felix Anudike FAU as a player together, and it's like Malik's your early down guy and then Felix is running up the arc, sure. But one domino falls on that defensive line and it could get really ugly really quick. And that's where I think I have a little bit of concern about just the outlook of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and they got more time. We'll see what the next preseason game brings, and see which of those two units in particular takes a step forward. I think offensive line and then those two units were by far these parts of the team that struggled the most. Offensive line had some injuries, cornerback had some injuries. So we'll see who, FAU, Malik Herring, we'll see which one of those guys, if either one of those guys can take a step forward. We'll see if Watson or Najee Johnson or Kelvin Joseph being back can make that secondary look a little better. Hopefully the offensive line plays some more reps together with the ones, but then even beyond that, you hope the backups look better if Wanya Morris and everybody's inserted back into their original spot. I think those are probably the areas that they struggled the most in, besides, quarterback 4, Ian Book. I don't want to come down too hard on somebody, a 4-string quarterback. We had to get here at some point in time, man. I can't watch Ian Book play football. I can't do it. What's the point? He doesn't allow the offense to function. You don't even get to see who's doing their job correctly because Ian Book is too busy running around as soon as the snap is completed. It's such a difficult thing to watch. I don't know how he is on a roster.
I'm not participating.
I'll do it for you.
Participate.
You agree with me.
No, Matthew. I got to step in and defend Ian Book. He's a 4th-string quarterback. What more do you want? You want him to throw dimes and dots all over the field? He wouldn't be a 4th-string quarterback if he did that.
I want him to attempt to throw the football to his own team instead of running as soon as he hits the back of his drop.
He had wire mesh as an offensive line.
He's wire mesh with an arm.
I need to confirm something here really quick, and this will be the closest thing to slandering Ian Book's name that I will get to today. And it's actually not even about Ian Book, but it is a little bit. I need to see when Sean Payton left the New Orleans Saints.
I just had to get off my chest. I had to watch a quarter of Ian Book hit the back of his drop, spin left backwards out of the pocket and take off and run while the passing concept was quite literally still trying to develop. He was running before it completely. It's just, I had to get it off my chest.
I don't know if Ian Book was drafted by Sean Payton or not. I really hope he was.
I think he was.
He did it in 7-on-7 and 1-on-1 drills at the Senior Bowl. It's not like this is the first time he's done this.
All right, I think Ian Book. All right, we're gonna say, yep, Ian Book was drafted by Sean Payton in the 4th round. And Ian Book had no business being a 4th round pick when he was drafted in the 4th round. And quarterback guru Sean Payton, who is excited about Bo Nix the same way that he's excited about Patrick Mahomes coming out allegedly, drafted Ian Book in the 4th round. So,
by the way,
yep. So I think that's all we need to do. Yeah, thank you, Mizzou 19. Appreciate you. Thank you supporting. All the super chats wind up going to the KCSN Foundation, by the way, just so you guys know. So during the season, if you guys are doing that, all these hundreds of you sickos watching the show tonight, thank you so much
Watching
for
slander Ian Book.
Yeah. I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna the book is out. The book is out.
That's enough.
Anybody else you want to talk about? Anybody else?
If you open it up, I'm coming to the Ian Book again, so you might as well just move on.
Oh, I'm gonna close the show out then.
Oh no, real quick. Noah Gray, nice. Jared Wiley, I wish we would have seen him in the red zone. Like I don't know. I want to see more of Wiley. They got him involved a little bit. They got him involved early. He ran a couple comebacks later in the game that I thought looked a little clunky. So like we'll see. I want to see what he looks like.
I think they're hiding Jared Wiley in plain sight. They are 100% hiding Jared Wiley. You heard Ari Wolf talk about how excited they were about a Jared Wiley. I don't think that's just coming out of nowhere. I think they're hiding a guy that they have a lot of belief in, and they're excited about the outlook for him. Got a couple, simple. He ran an out route on a Y-ISO, I think, caught one, and caught an under route and almost fumbled it, or did fumble it, but he did fumble it.
That's fine.
Poor Nico.
What do you mean? He didn't fumble at all. He caught a ball.
Yeah, what are you talking about? There's no fumble. You look at the books. Look at the books. Look at the stats. There's no fumble. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about.
Catches. It really stinks for Nico, though, that he had an easy touchdown that Oladukin left about 5 yards short for absolutely no reason.
Yeah. And that was QB3 for sure. Like definitive QB3 for sure.
You're saying poor Nico, he led the team in receiving yards.
Okay. I mean,
and receptions.
Time to talk about if there's a QB controversy. Patrick Mahomes only 27 yards tonight.
Some are saying there's a 4th round pick from New Orleans that's just really, really climbing the charts.
He was 8 for 9.
Down his neck. Breathing down his neck.
He was 8 for 9. It was about the throws he didn't make, I think, more than anything. Anyways,
love you, Ian.
I don't know if I have any other big overarching takes about this team today. Can't wait to rewatch
people join late. Hollywood Brown update real quick because people did join late. Same injury, according to Andy Reid, that Tyreek Hill suffered against the Jags in, was it 2019? The SC joint injury. He is at the hospital now getting evaluated for severity. So we don't know how long he will be out, but he has an SC joint injury to his left shoulder.
So hoping to see him back week 1. Wouldn't be stunned if he's not. It's going to be a tight turn to get there, so he may not get the revenge game until the Chiefs bop him in the divisional round. At home, by the way, this time around. Any other closing thoughts, Tucker, before we get out of here?
It seems like it's been a pretty slow leak from the press conference. I legitimately only saw the update of Hollywood Brown. I didn't even see anything about McCade Mattower, who was left with an injury, an apparent knee injury, I should say. Don't want to speculate. And I've only seen Hollywood, so like nothing really has been coming out. Also, he was taken to the hospital, Hollywood Brown was, and Pro Football Talk is taking that way out of context, that hospital part of it. I just saw from PFT.
It's probably like Hollywood Brown hospitalized.
Well, yeah, he said Hollywood Brown at hospital with sterniovacular joint injury.
I'm fairly sure that Tyreek Hill did the same thing.
Yeah, it's like not technically incorrect, but like also
he's trying
very
to make
misleading.
He's trying to make it very...
Yeah, with that injury, you're looking to make sure that there isn't like other damage.
I think that's technically more collarbone. Like, I'm not a doctor. I want to make that clear. I do podcasts for a living, not doctoring. I think it's more collarbone than like shoulder, if that makes sense. Like it's closer to the collarbone.
Be roughly your collarbone connecting to your sternum.
Yeah.
The collarbone's connected to the...
End it.
That's enough.
Hey,
we're done here.
No, we do need to say something very important. Shout out to our wonderful partner, Holiday Distillery, for their support of KC Sports Network. They are absolutely tremendous partner of ours. They're a day one partner of ours, and we absolutely love working with them, going out there, hanging out with them, and enjoying their delicious products. Thank you to Tucker MD. The D stands for MD. There's a silent M.
Yeah.
Tucker MD Franklin. That's Matthew Lane. I'm Kent Swanson. We'll be back on Monday with the Casey Laboratory to break down more of what we saw. Can't wait to talk to you then. We love you. We appreciate you. Chiefs lose. We'll catch you later.
Return the books.